building housing Hamas operatives, a command center used by a senior official in Hamas's naval forces, an operational asset used by Hamas located within a mosque, and an asset used by the terror group for intelligence. The retaliatory strikes come as over 700 Israelis have been confirmed murdered by the Hamas onslaught. The Israeli Health Ministry this morning, being Monday, saying around 2,400 are wounded, with over 300 of the injured in serious condition. Well, let's now go to northern Israel, where our correspondent Pierre Kloschendler is standing by. Pierre, the worries are that this could become a war on all borders with Hezbollah in the north there. What are you seeing on the ground there this morning?
I don't know if you're able to hear what's happening. There's a loud noise of uncrewed aerial vehicles that are patrolling the skies between Israel and Lebanon at this moment. And it's been an incessant loud noise here where we're standing on the Israeli-Lebanese border in an undisclosed location for obvious security reasons. But let me show you a little bit the lay of the land here. There is a first wall, which is more of a protective wall. And then behind that wall, there is another wall, which is on the blue line, which is the UN-recognized Israel-Lebanese border in this section of the border in Western Galilee. The situation looks quite on the way to the border. We've seen a few crews of reserve soldiers camping on the side of the roads. We've seen them also patrolling along the roads. There's some roadblocks along the roads leading to the border, but we haven't seen, at least it's not in the public eye, we haven't seen the reinforcements that everybody's talking about, although what we understand is that those reinforcements are not in the same amount as the forces of the IDF streaming towards the Gaza Strip. Yet, there is an obvious reason to reinforce the northern border to contain any possible escalation into a multi-front theatrical operation, and this is why at this moment there are reinforcements and the IDF is in a heightened state of alert.
Pierre Kloschendler, correspondent there in northern Israel, no doubt will be coming to you later on in the day for more updates. With me here in studio, meantime, is retired Colonel Dr. Jacques Neria, the former Deputy Head of Assessment for Israeli Military Intelligence and the former Foreign Policy Advisor to Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, and Guy Azriel, I-24 News Senior Producer and Correspondent. Gentlemen, good morning and thank you for being here. I'd like to start with this notification that we have just got. The Thai Foreign Ministry says that 12 nationals were killed, 8 wounded, and 11 kidnapped in southern Israel. How many more foreign nationals, apart from Israelis, are we likely to hear that have actually been captured into the Gaza Strip? And what then would be Hamas's aims with foreign nationals as opposed to perhaps Jews or Israelis?
Well, the foreign nationals could be also Jews. But the thing is that what we know is that several hostages who carry, lots of Israelis carry double nationality. So we're talking about Americans, we're talking about Mexicans, we're talking about Europeans. And I think that this will, in a way, weigh very much when the Egyptians will talk to Hamas about releasing at least the women and the kids. This is the first priority right now. And I think that they will concentrate on that. But Hamas has already said that they will not abide unless there's something in return. What do they mean? They say very clearly that the intention of having 100 or 130 hostages in Gaza is to empty the Israeli prisons. We're talking about what? We're talking about at least 5,088 security prisoners, Palestinian ones, that are the worst criminals on earth, and that they want to be released. At this point, I don't think that there is much to talk about with the Hamas. I don't think that there is a dialogue that can be established on this basis.
And Guy, I want to bring you in here on a personal note because Sderot residents have been told, as we heard from our correspondent Nicole Zedek, who is in the southern Israeli city, to stay indoors because the army is concerned that there are more infiltrations in the south. You're from Ashkelon. That's not too far off. We're talking again about these southern communities. A lot of us very fortunate to be in Tel Aviv and away from that. What must that fear be like, knowing that you have to shelter in place because there could be literally terrorists walking on your street?
An impossible situation that has become a reality, unfortunately, for hundreds, if not thousands of families on the Gaza border communities, both in the city of Sderot and in all the kibbutzes along that border. Many families that woke up on that Saturday morning to the sound of explosions, and then people breaking into their homes, slaughtering them cold-blooded in their kitchens, in their beds, in their backyards. The extent of that devastation has not been fully understood yet because Israeli forces, our rescue teams, have not really arrived to all the scenes of these kibbutzes, to all the neighborhoods, to all the houses. So the number of casualties could grow. But even in the days and the hours that followed, people were stranded in their homes for many hours, sometimes since Saturday morning, without being able to leave, without having to get any supplies. But beyond that, fearing that someone is outside, ready to break in and ready to slaughter them, as they did to hundreds, if not more, of Israelis already killed in the hands of these cold-blooded murderers.
And Doctor, I want to move a bit to the political angle here because no doubt Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has his hands full at the moment dealing with the security situation. The first point of call, trying to make sure that these infiltrations are pushed back and that there are no terrorists in Israel, and then obviously to figure out what the retaliation will be from there. But we haven't heard a word from his hardline coalition members. Why is that? Why would they not feel the need to possibly reassure the public or to speak? We do know that there was a statement put out about the fact that they do support a unity government, but there hasn't been much reassurance in the sense of telling the public that they hear, they're aware, and just radio silence almost.
Well, you know, when the guns sound, the muses are silent. And I wouldn't say that Ben Gvir and Smotrich are muses, but I mean, they realize that they're facing a disaster. They're facing a political disaster. The Israeli public will certainly judge this government after the war and ask for accounting. And I think that this is one of the reasons that they don't have anything to say. But they don't understand the situation. Most of them have not served in the army. They don't know what. They haven't even put a uniform one day. So what do you expect from those people to give you an advice about how to conduct a war with Hamas? How not to be surprised? I mean, they are good in giving advices, but right now they understand that should not show because the people would be very critical of them.
Speaking of some of those residents that perhaps may be critical, I'd like to cross now to our correspondent Nicole Zedek, who is standing by for us in Sderot in southern Israel. Nicole, the reports coming out that the army is asking residents to stay indoors, to make sure that their front doors are locked, their windows are closed, and not to open up for anyone. They are concerned of more infiltrations. We know that there are about 6 locations around the country at the moment. What are you seeing and hearing on the ground?
Exactly, Batya. It is a very dangerous and ongoing situation here in the south. As you said, residents urged to stay inside, lock their doors, because this is one of the active scenes here in Sderot. But we are hearing that, as I did hear earlier, very, very heavy exchange of gunfire between Israeli soldiers and the Hamas terrorists. We now are hearing reports that 5 terrorists were killed in this area. Those gunshots I heard were less than 500 meters away in a field nearby. And so we are hearing those reports now that 5 of those terrorists were killed. We're not hearing any reports of active hostage situations at this time either, but all of this as Israeli soldiers continue to sweep the area, cleanse the streets. They're going door to door. They're looking through gardens, looking through these fields, blocking off streets, just like you can see behind me here. This is one of the many different roadblocks that are taking place all throughout these southern areas as Israeli forces are really trying to get a hold on the situation and see how many more terrorists continue to be in the area. So it's very, very dangerous for everyone to be out here. And while we are seeing all of this activity on the ground, we're also hearing plenty of activity overhead as well, as the IDF says they continue to use airstrikes over the Gaza Strip. They say since the beginning of the war, it's about 48 hours ago now, targeting 1,200 targets in the Gaza Strip. So throughout these southern cities, it still smells like smoke. I see smoke in the distance. My eyes are almost burning. So we continue to hear these loud explosions overhead really happening not far in the distance. And so all of these southern communities are feeling the effects of that as well. Just the remnants of all of these explosions and strikes lasting here in the air. But for the main part, all of these residents here in these southern cities are really just asked, as you said, stay inside because this is an active situation as the defense forces continue to sweep the area and try and get a handle on exactly how many terrorists remain infiltrating into Israeli territory.
Nicole, making our way to work this morning, a lot of the storefronts in the central city of Tel Aviv are closed. People are not necessarily taking public transport to their workplaces. What must that be like there as you move along the streets in Sderot in southern Israel, that the entire city has almost come to a standstill? We're talking about a city that is often, unfortunately, used to barrage of rockets coming over, but this seems to be taking on a whole different ballgame.
It feels like war, Batia. That's exactly what it feels like. You drive through the streets all the way from the center, as you said, Tel Aviv, all the way south here in Sderot, and streets are pretty much completely empty. You'll see gas or shards of glass lining the roads, different cars kind of pushed away to the side, some of them lit on fire, no tires left, other of them riddled with bullet holes, shattered glass breaking everywhere from the passenger seat to the back seat, really busted out windows. It's a war scene as you're going through here. And so it's very, very scary driving around on these roads. It's an eerie feeling because that's what you're seeing. And then, as I said, looking through the sky as well, it's just dark and cloudy outside. And you can smell the remnants of all of these explosions happening in the distance. So, as you said, most residents, businesses, everything is shut down. No one is on the streets right now, as they should not be. Even in Tel Aviv, most places are still shut down because this is still an ongoing situation. And as we saw last night, randomly, it seems, there was another barrage of rockets targeting central Israel. So although there is a lot of activity here in the south, we continue to see that activity in the center of Israel as well. And so residents all throughout the country right now really need to be on high alert and listening to all of those alerts from the Home Front Command and taking the necessary precautions.
Absolutely, as do our journalists on the ground. Nicole Zedek, be safe out there in Sderot in southern Israel. We'll touch base with you a little later. Still with me in studio is retired Colonel Dr. Jacques Neria and Guy Azriel, I-24 News senior producer and correspondent. I want to touch base on what Nicole just pointed out, Doctor, if I may, the last few moments that we had about really where the global community stands right now. At the moment, yes, it does seem that international news appears to be, I would say, slightly less biased towards Israel, but it seems like the minute that retaliatory strike ends up in Gaza, the tables are going to turn very quickly.
Well, you just said it right. I think the window we have to act in Gaza is very, very short. And if we don't do that, the pictures that will transpire from Gaza outside to the outside world will just overcome the other pictures of horror that has been published and spread all over the world. Right now, I feel, I have all the time, I'm receiving messages of sympathy and solidarity from friends in France, in Africa, in the United States, all over Europe. And the effect of the horror pictures published by Hamas has done it well. I mean, unfortunately for Israel, and for the first time since 1967, we feel that the international opinion is siding with Israel, because the animality and the bestial conduct of those the terrorists has really upset the whole world. Now, as I said, I mean, when pictures will come about, because Israel right now has adopted a new tactic in Gaza. There is no more talk knocking on the roof and telling the people just to go out.
I want to just point out that we are looking at live images of the Gaza skyline as you're explaining this.
No more warning for the inhabitants. The warning has been given well ahead of time. You just have to leave. And being that taking into consideration this fact, that means that the casualties will be enormous in Gaza. And this is one detail that we have to remember. But this is the price that they have to pay. And unfortunately, I mean, we are right now experiencing the effect of more than 1,000 terrorists. It's an army that has invaded Israel, taking over 11 military bases and 20 localities, and they are fighting. The death toll is much more bigger than we hear right now. There are localities and communities that have been emptied totally, and this is, I mean, we are in a state of war, and we have to react and accordingly. And it will take time, because there are two waves. One wave of terrorists that have already acted, and the dormant ones that are waking up right now and that we are fighting.
I have to say something, because we need to remember this is not a watershed moment in the history of the conflict with Gaza. This is a watershed moment in the history of the state of Israel, equal maybe only to that of the Yom Kippur War. And with all due respect to the support or not the support of the international community, Israel is not going to be the same. Israeli civilians will not accept anything other than changing the equation that we have been used to for the past 15 years or so of ongoing fighting with Hamas. The Israeli public will not take anything less than dismantling Hamas, whatever the price may be. The pogrom that we've experienced is maybe similar to sites that we saw in the Holocaust. The brutality is Nazi-like, slaughtering women and children. I'm reading more and more stories of survivors hiding in the roofs while their neighbors are being slaughtered, screaming, shouting. Those who managed to lock themselves in the shelters were burned alive. They're burned, they torched those houses. We're talking about hundreds of Israeli families slaughtered at the hands of this murderous Hamas group. And we heard what a senior Hamas official said just yesterday. Mahmoud Azahar, the entire planet will be under our law. There will be no more Jews or Christian traitors. For anyone in the world that seems to think this is about territory, this is about occupation, we've heard all these statements before. This is not what we're dealing with. And this is the same threat as we're facing from Hezbollah. And if Israel is not acting now in a way that changes the equation, perhaps taking over Gaza, whatever that may take, the Israeli Republic will not accept anything less than that.
I would add, I mean, that this is a failure of two concepts, two ideologies. One ideology, political one, trying to contain Hamas and giving Hamas is interested by economy, by money, by Qatari dollars and so on, and just using this element to make a difference between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, and weakening as much as possible the Palestinian Authority in order to. We could afford that, feeling and believing that we could coexist with Hamas, and Hamas just used us, used the money, used all the policy and turned into a monster. This is one thing. And the second thing is the failure of the strategy on the ground. The wall that we constructed and cost us more than 4 billion shekels facing Gaza has proven to be ineffective, and it was just blown up in several places, several breaches. And this is we could not imagine that Hamas, we had in our mind a small militia, was so sophisticated that it copied into the minute details the master plan that Hezbollah has done on the northern border, and adopted it. We just looked at 2 months ago about on a drill that that Hezbollah had in South Lebanon. And we laughed. We saw that motorcycles, they were attacking the wall with motorcycles. Said, oh, this is what they have. Indeed, this is what they did. They blew up in several places the fence. And they entered Israel first with the motorcycles. And this is what they did. I mean, we have to just adopt a different policy and towards Hamas and towards our enemy. We cannot be complacent. This is not we have to stop being arrogant, and we have to look at the reality and treat it as such. We have paid a heavy price in '73. And I thought that this was the biggest lesson we had. I was a young lieutenant at the time, and I thought that this would not be repeated. And now it's repeated. It's even worse. It's even worse.
You mentioned Hezbollah. We know that Hezbollah is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, proxy by the Iran regime. And there's a lot of, obviously, conspiracy theories and theories out there at the moment of just a few weeks ago, the United States has a prisoner exchange deal with Iran. 5 prisoners for 5 prisoners, plus the release of $6 billion. And there is a fortune of concern that that money was wired to Iran, which was thus wired either by means of financial money, like the actual money, or by weapons into Hamas, into the Gaza Strip. Iran is now saying they have absolutely no part in this. Is this something to be believed?
Well, I think that the master plan comes from Tehran. The master plan of what's happening today. And there are some information that Kahani, the head of the Revolutionary Guards, is right now in Lebanon, and he's teleguiding all these efforts that are going on in the northern part of Israel and the southern part, and in the West Bank also. Now, I believe that Hezbollah has lost ahead of time, because we were surprised in Gaza. We were supposed to be surprised on both fronts, because this is exactly the plan that Hezbollah had. Right now, all the localities bordering the border with Lebanon have been evacuated. There are no more. There's no more a chance for Hezbollah to take hostages like Hamas did in Gaza. And I think that we are much more prepared right now. And certainly, the presence of the Americans is a definite additive that we have taken into account, and Iran has to consider that very carefully before even waging anything against Israel in the northern part of our borders.
Let's touch a little bit more on perhaps lighter spirits now. Let's cross to our senior correspondent, Owen Altman, who's standing by for us in Tel Aviv at a donation center. Owen, what is the latest that you have for us? It's still early in the morning, but what is happening on the ground where you are?
That's right, Batya, earlier in the morning, but as you're about to see, everyone here getting started. Volunteers coming, and as you're seeing, packing up all of what has been donated, both items for civilians from the south who have had to evacuate their homes. You just saw a box of shoes, onward to things needed by reservist soldiers who have reported for duty, who might not have some of the equipment they need, might need blankets, might need hygiene materials. A lot of people having to leave their homes really, really quickly and show up for duty. By the way, Batya, this is an operation center and a donation drive run by the protest movement against the judicial overhaul that has been such a part of the Israeli story over the course of the last 9 months. But of course, switching on a dime and moving from protesting against the government Saturday night in, Saturday night out, to what you see here, using the infrastructure and the WhatsApp groups and the Facebook groups and the social media and all of the networks that had been built up for the protest, and instead deploying them for what you see around you, and bringing all of these volunteers here, many of them younger, to be here and to put these boxes together and then to be able to get them to the people in need. This is at the convention center in Tel Aviv, so people can come up here and donate the items that are needed. And again, here they are packed and then stored and then delivered or picked up by those who are in need. Again, whether they be civilians in the south who had to flee their homes, sometimes after experiencing extreme trauma, often with children, again, and onto reserve soldiers who may not have all of the equipment that they need given by the government. So, Batya, you can see around us this effort, again, taking in dozens, if not hundreds of people, all of them volunteers, of course. And we should say this is just one of many, of dozens, if not hundreds, of civilian initiatives up and down Israel, of people who have been mobilized to give of their money and of their time, whatever they can, to give to those in need. In some cases, maybe goods the government should have provided, but in many cases not, as you can see here, goods that seem directed more towards civilians, again, and all that they have experienced. Batya.
Our senior correspondent Owen Altman there at a donation drive in Tel Aviv will be getting more updates from you later on in the broadcast. I'd like to thank very much our Guy Azriel and also Dr. Jacques Neria, and just recap that the Israeli military says that aircraft continued to pound the Gaza Strip. That objective clear: to devastate the capabilities of the Hamas terror group. Among the targets hit in recent hours, several command posts, building housing Hamas operatives, buildings housing weapons depots, and also operational assets used by Hamas that were stored in mosques as well as schools. The retaliatory strikes coming as over 700 Israelis at this time have been confirmed murdered by Hamas's onslaught, with that number unfortunately expected to rise. The Israeli Health Ministry this morning saying around 2,400 Israelis are wounded, with over 300 of them in serious condition. We'll be bringing you more updates here on Breaking News editions throughout the day on the i24 News Desk. But if anything you missed, make sure to check out our website at i24news.tv and, of course, our social media pages. And remember, the best thing that you can do at the moment, besides staying safe, is sharing the correct information on social media and making sure the world is aware of